said it was better for kids running around his house than yours.
I did live on the
He's okay. He's officially got the Army call on. The funniest thing is when he's just sitting there with his head looking around and he sees something he wants and then he's gone. The vacuum cleaner did his favorite thing. Like, we leave that in his sight, he's like after, we're like, no, don't. Put that back in the closet. All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock on March 20th. We have Jeremy doing this remotely tonight via phone. Jamie, would you mind reading the mission statement?
Sure. Our mission is to inspire academic excellence, to nurture curiosity, creativity, and imagination, and to do so within an environment rich with warmth, kindness, and respect.
Nothing publicly. I will take a moment on behalf of the board and everybody at the school, Jamie, we'd like to present you with a plaque for your dedication and service to church.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Make me cry. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we'll move on. Any additions or changes to the agenda? Rick, you want to go into the Ziegler capital?
Yep, okay,
Or excuse me, before we do that, we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. So I'm gonna, if there's no opposition, I'm gonna add that to the agenda after privilege of the floor to approve the minutes. Everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from February 20th. Sarah?
I'll second that.
Jamie? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, floor is yours, Rick.
all right. To follow up on the February meeting with the, you all wanted to take a hard look at the capital proposal with a 30-year amortization. So I'm going to start, so basically I sent you a few documents via email on Friday. But I'd like to, so I want to start with, it's actually the initial budget for next year, the 526, you've got it in hard copy in your folders, and it's sort there. And, let me know when you get there now. All right, so if you just look at the first page of next year's budget, which is the pro-forma budget, so kind of doing a couple of things here. Essentially, I developed a cumulative expense budget of a little bit more than 4.8 million. And then I'll come over to the operating tab where you can see where the financing fits in. But essentially, with everything in mind, personnel, non-personnel, in terms of next year's budget, wanted to see if it basically fit in relation to our current year funding. So if you look at the funding line, a little over 5 million, that's current year. And then just like last year, when I do the pro forma, on the funding side, I just take what the current year is until, like this year, there'll be another biennium budget build, so we won't know actual, what I call ADM rates and all of that, to whenever the legislature passes a budget and the governor signs it. So that's the first part. If you go to the last page, the operating budget, the non-personnel budget, and you go pretty much all the way down to the bottom, long-term debt, I basically put in the amount, 30-year amortization. Remember the first 3 years are just interest only. So I put that in that budget line. And so, just to show you that on the expense side, how that would look in next year's budget, okay? If you go to the next document is the long-term talking points. It's a single sheet right behind, right in with my finance, just a Word document. So what I did was a couple things here. Sarah, you talked about, that relationship, and if we basically either level out on enrollment or come down a bit. So, I'm basically showing an expense budget here on an initial for next year, a little bit, 4,828,220. And what I did, if you look at item 2, the long-term debt, I did some ratios here. So long-term debt to funding ratio, but what I did was I moved the funding level down to 4.8, Sarah.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of 5 million, 4.8. And just to show you all, what the ratios would be, long-term debt, our current long-term debt, the 447,535 against 4.8 million funding, that's 9.3. And then if you look at the future ratio on the 30-year amortization, the first 3 years, the interest only, again, against 4.8 in funding, that would increase to 12% on that long-term debt to funding ratio. And then years 4 through 30, what I basically did, I took the high point, like I said, and that's somewhere out in year 10, 11. But over that year 4 to 30, the annual payment is out in the area, 1 year all the way out to 30, averages about 731,000, which would be 15% debt to funding ratio there. So,
Quick question, if you know, what do we typically roll over in the year?
Yeah, so
Percentage-wise?
percentage-wise, I've got in my financial report, I got a cash flow. So if you want to go to that, let me show you, because I added an element to the monthly financial report. Because when I generally present, I'm showing you, budget activity, what we built on the funding side and what we built on the expense side. So if you go to the very last page of what would be my monthly, when I come through it, I did an operating cash flow snapshot, which I'll start kind of adding in, regularly to the monthly reports when we get to this time of year. And essentially what I do here is take a look at what we have in our remaining state allocation for the year that hasn't been drawn down, what we have remaining to collect from the districts on the remaining PMRs. So this cash flow relationship is simply Fund 1 and Fund 2. That's it, in our main operating checking account. And then I add basically the balance in that account as of yesterday. So you get about 1.76, this is on a cash flow to get to your question, Joseph. So, and then I take what I'm projecting to be our payroll expenses, and I included the one we just ran today, March, April, May, June, based on our average payroll through the year, and then I project non-personnel expenses. So I'm projecting just under 1.4 million in expenses, right? So it looks like right now our operating cash flow at the end of June, I'll say will be in the neighborhood of about 300,000. So, you know, I wanted to kind of present this picture so you've got that from an operating cash flow perspective, you know. And last year, I think our operating cash flow was a little bit over 400,000 when we got to June. Might have been closer to 500,000. The variation here is on the legal expense side year to date. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's safe to say, you know, looking at our current ratio at 9%.
Right.
Versus to where we're gonna be, you know, with a 6% increase at 15. We're averaging more than a 6% cash flow now. With the
Yeah,
$3,000
if you
to
kind of look at,
$4,000.
if you look at the impact on cash flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you add over the current, what our current long term is, right, you would add another. So if you look at that 383, 582, let's say we had the bond funding payment this year, it's an additional, whatever the arithmetic is. So that cash flow in this would be down about 100.
Yeah,
another
but we would
100.
still be in the positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at.
You get at the
Exactly, that's where I was, you know, can we sustain the growth?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, going back to the long-term debt talking points, you know, I also, in point, item number 3, I'm giving you, again, a relationship of looking at and this would be on the pro-forma net budget for next year, personnel expense to funding ratio. So that's 72% on 4.8 million, again, 4.8 million funding level. Operating, which includes that long-term debt component, so that's 28. So if you look at the overall budget, 72% budgeted for personnel, 28 for non-personnel expenses. I can share with you, you know, all the budgets I worked with at ECU on the med school side and College of Ed over 22 years. Those ratios were higher. In other words, personnel over there was heavier at about 85, sometimes 90%, and then that left a lot less money for the operational things. So 72%, 28%. Again, this is against 4.8 million. So if you take those two numbers and divide it into 5 million, you know, they look a little bit different. You know, but I wanted to show for you all 4.8 million if our enrollment goes down, or for some reason they adjust the per student ADM calculation, which, I mean, practically, you know, that would really surprise me to go the other way. But just to give you a sense of 30-year amortization, you know, going that way, you know, can it basically be budgeted in? And again, that interest only for the first 3 years, you know, as I talked about, I think Scott talked about it in his presentation to you all. It allows for an organization to kind of get into the long-term debt obligation prior to picking up the interest component there. And I'll come back up onto point number 1. I did that the current balance on existing long-term debt is 4.7. So I kind of purposely put 4.9 in at the beginning. I knew it was gonna be less than that. And this is after the annual payment on the second USDA loan, which basically expensed out this week, was about over 80,000. And so 51,000 of that was on principal, so that, at the end of this month, that's actually gonna be our current long-term debt. And that'll go down a little bit with the two loans at First Bank we make monthly. But, so essentially, you're looking at, a difference in the finance amount of, instead of 10,140,000, 9,940,000, taking that 200,000, making that 2,000 adjustment. And so, the only other thing that could be adjusted would be that project fund line, that 4 million. We won't know what the final project is until we get to, probably I'd say about a couple more months. Yeah, and once they can get, we'll have a cost projection probably in about another month, but that's not the final, that's not the final cost that Ziegler would need to finish the underwriting. So, in other words, they would get started on the underwriting, and on their timeline, at about the 7-week point, that's where they're at that point, they need the, the final cost, right? And by their process, that timeline takes whatever it takes, from the contractor's perspective to get that finalized and back to them. And then they pick up on their timeline to finalize the underwriting. That's basically, hopefully, is that
No, it was great.
sufficient? And I did talk to Scott Ross on my way out of town after the February meeting to go on the trip. So, and he kind of reached out to me, so I was updating him on it. I said, hey, I've got, so he's aware, of what I'm talking to you about in the 30-year and what you all wanted. He did say this. He said, look, if you need 32 years on your amortization, we can do that, which I didn't know. So he said it doesn't have to go from like 30 to 35. He said if you need somewhere in the middle, he said, we do that as well. He
So
said
we
30.
tried 29?
He said 30.
How close
I
can we
don't
get
know.
to this?
28.5.
He said 32.5. He was going right in the middle between 30 and 35.
28 and a half years.
So, but just looking at the structure of things, physically, can't say it tonight. So, and that's it.
Any questions?
No, my main one
Big
was the,
decision. Jeremy, I don't know how much of that you could hear, but any questions on, the Ziegler proposal?
I'm good so far, I'll do it here.
There's no further questions. I will entertain a motion to allow Rick and Austin to move forward with the Ziegler funding.
Make a motion.
Jeremy, you're out the gate.
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right. We'll pop champagne and And I also, I spoke earlier, I've asked her to keep us, updated as they work through with Stocks and Taylor and, before they finalize the design, that's something we'll have the opportunity to look at.
Nice.
All right, do we have an SGA report?
I don't think so.
And I did want to say, Rick, we appreciate all the work on this. I know this was,
Yeah.
time consuming to say the least.
Well, it's a big decision, but when you look at the, strategically for the school, those modulars have to be replaced. I'll be honest with you, if we were going another way, trying to upfit the modulars, we talked about it, as well, but, so structurally the path.
Yeah.
And, so.
Thank you.
No issue.
I don't think so.
Dr. Dearborn?
Okay. Wasn't here last time, because I didn't get on the Zoom meeting. So in the past month, we've celebrated Read Across America. We had parents come read aloud their favorite Dr. Seuss or non-Dr. Seuss book. We also had a walk around with some of the Dr. Seuss, and in several classrooms, high schoolers came, some even dressed up, so it was like very fun to celebrate, Read Across America. I attended the book fair like as a parent. It was very nice. It was nice for me because it was across the street from my neighborhood. I think that the books were not dramatically different, and probably we had less say in what books were available to students. So, I don't know the reason why I'm moving away from Scholastic, but, I don't know. It
Did y'all
didn't-
make a good one? Did they know?
I don't know. So, that's just my 2 cents about that.
Where was it at?
Barnes and Noble.
And it was not, I mean, it was nice to like go there as a person who lives in Greenville and like see school people there and like mix and mingle. But,
Different vibe.
yeah,
Do you think it was the distance too nice?
probably, and I think probably, I don't like know the business model for Scholastic, but their business is like getting in schools and like helping schools make money, whereas that's not really Barnes and Noble's goal. So, I don't know, but like I said, there was like less choice even at Barnes and Noble's than you would here, like you could decide what to put out and what not. So, I guess you could decide not to attend or not, so, to Barnes and Noble, but. Anyways, Lower L is doing a fundraiser, we haven't done one since I've been here, it was Bonnie Miller's idea. It's a sweet deal if you guys want some coupons, but, we're selling them for $10, we get $5 for each coupon, but parents can go get, or, school community people can go get a $30 car wash, so that's an awesome deal. And we have sold like 68 so far, and it's like another week, I think, so it's been exciting. And then I just put down like the end of the year is already coming up. We've sent out our last field trip form for the year. Kathy sent out like MAPS signups for the end of year testing, so it's like, we're feeling like the crunch already. So, that's just kind of like a mindset we gotta get in. And then, we also, Kathy very politely reminded us about the dress code, because we weren't doing our best to enforce it, and not by like defiance, but just being busy. But it got us thinking like Lower L, not just me, the Lower L teachers, and they wanted me to ask you if we could maybe consider age and level of students, when we like make guidelines. I think the biggest thing she reminded us specifically about was leggings. And I completely understand why you wouldn't want everyone wearing leggings at this school, but like a first grader who's on the floor most of the day, just by the nature of their work and age, like, yeah, so if we could just.
I would say, every year, at least for the past
Yeah.
2 years, we've had a very extensive discussion at our summer retreat. Both of those have resulted in changes. What I would ask is you go back and talk to other faculty. Any suggested changes, please email them to us prior. Normally, we do a retreat in July.
Okay.
And we normally have a very lengthy, conversation, and that any changes that are gonna be made, we make it the August meeting.
Awesome,
So,
okay.
but can't stress enough, direct feedback on, this specific, leggings for first graders or whatever would be, great help, and why, that's very helpful for us to consider.
Okay, sounds good.
I have inside knowledge that there's gonna be some fifth graders hitting this conversation up again.
Thank you,
Thank you.
that's it. That was my only thing ever that's been brought to me was today, I was like a
That's
little
good.
nervous.
Well, look, we enjoy it, and, it's just like, with the funding and everything, what we just move forward with, I was hoping we'd have, more input from the community, and positive or negative, and there wasn't one.
Oh, about the building?
Yeah.
Everyone is so excited.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think that like not everyone knows maybe like 100% like how close we are and how, not because they haven't done their job, but just like, it hasn't been like 100% yet moving forward, but like, everyone is very excited. Like logistically having all admin all together, and I mean, it's just really exciting. I'm just jealous that Ruby will like have moved out before, so.
She'll have the music room,
Yeah,
which is gonna be epic.
yeah, yeah, we're so excited.
Thank you. SGA?
The high school report is that, we had 5 new members for, National Honor Society. And National Honor Society's, fundraiser or, service project for this month was Read Across America. And members went to Children's House and Lower Elementary to read to the students and dress up as their favorite Dr. Seuss characters. Students in the maker class have been building birdhouses and other things to prepare for the artisan fair. Middle school and high school students participated in the Beaufort County Schools math competition on March 14th. And Mr. and Dr. Haldolson taught our science classes a hands-on lesson on buoyancy. And SGA is currently planning a unity trip for April 10th and 11th to the Roanoke Christian Service Camp. And the celebration business has been planning prom for May 16th at the Barns at St. Andrews in Greenville. And on March 18th, a lot of the high school students went to ECU to participate in the fire-thon, and the 2 teams placed 8th and 11th place overall.
Thank you. MPTO?
She didn't have a formal report, I don't think, but, the race craze is coming up. And she feels pretty Paula talking about feels pretty confident, after that they will be able to help us out with an outdoor scoreboard.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
We're just moving up. Girl.
So, that'll be good. She's asked about some other items that might be of interest, so I'll let you know.
So this should be just shy of the 731,000 annually on the
That's correct.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Paula, just like, because we have Kids Fest coming up, but like, she was allowed us to like submit orders to her for stuff that we needed, and she used that money, her money to help us out, so that was really helpful.
She's good.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Coordinators reports?
Yeah, I can do, the Children's House report, in elementary, and like Ms. Miller mentioned, Read Across America was an exciting week here. Children's House did invite all the county commissioners to come, and the sheriff, and most of the county commissioners could not come, but, Sheriff Hammonds did come and read. And so that was exciting. They went on a field trip to, it's a zoo life, I don't know if you guys have been there, but they had a great time. It's just a little zoo that you can walk through, but they've got really quite exotic animals. So, yeah, it's cool. And they're gonna be hatching eggs here, which they usually do every spring, so that will be exciting. Miss Jody did go with us when we met with the architect and the builder, last week. And we had a great first sort of introduction to the design, so, that was exciting. For elementary, the students are working on their Kids Fest projects and papers, to get ready. And, Ms. Monday has started with their dances, so, it's an exciting time. Upper L did celebrate Pie Day on March 14th, and they ate pie, like a really large amount of pie. It was a lot. So they had a good time. And several of the classes in elementary school are making some items for the artisan fair, which will be nice. They have a few field trips coming up. Fourth grade will go next week to Bath for the Heritage Days, so that's kind of a fun trip. Middle school, Delaney mentioned that the some middle schoolers and high schoolers went to the math competition, and our 8th grade team got first place, which was really exciting, and the middle schoolers got 5 places in the top 10, so, I know. Yes, I know. And with Envirothon, I mean, we haven't done that, and, it was a big list of teams, so, and I think it's given them some momentum for next year too, so, they're already planning what they're gonna do next year. There have been some students that have started, a few businesses in middle school, so there's a middle school Montessori Munchies, a Friday ice cream business, and a taco Wednesday, that's happening in middle school. And they are working on their Kids Fest as well. They're each making cuckoo clocks because they're studying Germany, and they're neat to see. Mr. Hadalton, who came and did the science presentation in high school, also went to middle school and did a science presentation on sonar, and he had a sonar handheld machine that he had made himself, and it was really neat. And he has a kindergartner coming next year. So I met him when he came for his tour, and he said, I want to come do some things. So we might see more of him. He was super interested.
Stay away from where the new building's going, because we don't need to be
Yeah.
covering any burial grounds or anything.
Right.
We thought you were building a building.
Yeah, he's an oceanographer, he's actually a guy. And what does his wife do?
If you hadn't asked me, I could
Okay,
have.
I'm sorry, it's all right.
I apologize on that, and I know she's a biologist of some sort, but that is not the official term. You'll have to
Okay.
forgive my ignorance on it. But both of them came out, they are awesome.
Yeah.
They are a really awesome family. I'm glad that they're a part of it. I'm looking forward to working with both of them again, because he's got some really cool ideas on what he would like to do, especially with some of the middle school students. We just got to flesh some of those ideas out. I haven't had a chance to talk with Ms. Harrington yet on it, but he's got some really good stuff.
I think that's all I have for the coordinator reports, unless y'all have any questions.
Well, I'll just jump in. It's kind of hard to do my report without a lot of us letting Delaney just go ahead and read off of it, because a lot of that stuff is really students, okay? A couple of things that after I was kind of listening, I was like, oh, I forgot to mention, ACTs are done. Aren't you happy? So ACT were finished up last week. We had a family donate a fridge to us. We have a new fridge in the kitchen, and it's for the culinary arts classes, so we are very happy to see that. But I wanted to piggyback on something about Envirothon just a little bit. So Envirothon, I was talking to Ms. Colin today. We placed 8th, okay? Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but we were 4 points away from placing 7th. If we had made those points, our school could have been going to state. We were just a few points away, and now that is an amazing thing for a first time to be that close to placing to go to the state competition. I was really pleased with that. I also was talking to Ms. Coleman as well, and you probably have as well, is the students that went, when it was really funny. They were out there by her door, and they kept like, can we look at our phones? Can we see our phones? And they were looking at their phones, and they were trying to wait for the scores to come in, and they were waiting, and they were waiting. And all of a sudden, they finally had a link that popped up on their computer. It says the 2025 scores. They were knocking on the door. Can we look together? Can we look together? So the students were really, really excited. They are also looking forward. They were combing over the data yesterday and today. Several of them were, and they were already trying to decide, like, okay, what could we do? How can we get ready for the next year? So I'm excited to see what they do on that.
That's awesome.
So it was really good.
Who is the coordinator that's kind of heading that up?
Ms. Coleman.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they're already talking about who they're going From the eighth grade.
Yeah.
They're gonna go present to the eighth
They're-
grade.
They're working on plans. It's just
I actually
interesting
had
to
a
see.
meeting with Ms. Coleman, and she was kind of talking about it again, she says, and the students really did all the work. I mean, but one of the comments she shared with me is like, a couple of students said, well, it really kind of matters who's on your team.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the things that's.
Gotta keep that.
Yeah, because of how it all works out, so.
What is it? Like, what do they do?
So,
Answer
and,
questions?
yes, basically, and you're gonna have to forgive my complete ignorance on all of it, but there are certain scientific topics, especially with, it's really a North Carolina environment, the East Coast and stuff like that. There was, 4 or 5 categories, and one of them is soils, and that's the toughest one, is just knowing what the soils are, and I really cannot recall the other categories. But what it was each of those students became an expert in that particular category. And so they worked together as a team to answer certain questions, and they competed against other schools. And again, I'm kind of giving a really layman's view of it right now, but it was really interesting. But we have in the science lab right now, we've got some new materials that the students are coming over to get ready for, even for next year, new materials. And it's books, it's just information that they look for every year. I wish Ms. Cullen was here right now. She could give you a really good rundown, but it is actually very fascinating.
What time's ice cream?
What's that?
I said, what time's ice cream?
Um,
Today was pretty fun day, so.
Yeah.
If you just wanna keep moving on to
Okay.
director's report.
Okay. Looking at our projected enrollment for next year, that really hasn't changed. The projection that we have is if every single person moves up to the next grade and we have no attrition. You can see our applications there. We actually have already made 4 6th grade offers and they've been accepted. So really 8 will be 4. And we've also made a 7th grade offer. But other than that, we're just kind of holding tight right now, to see what happens. So looking good on that end.
So I know we spoke before about, 8th grade moving up,
Mhm.
but I mean, even if we do have a little bit of attrition, I didn't realize how good of a position we'll still be in.
Right.
You know, going into next year. So
Right, right, yeah. Curriculum development, one of the things that we've had a couple of high school parents ask about are having semester-long courses as opposed to year-long courses. So we have put together a survey that we're gonna send out. I think it's pretty much ready to go. We've kind of gone back and forth on a few things just to get some input from parents. And we played a little bit with what some scheduling might look like, which is beastly, but it's also kind of fun. So, that's just something we're looking at, maybe for next year. So, stay tuned for that. We do have the Artisan Fair coming up on next, Thursday, and we have even more than 17. I think we've got more like 20 booths. So we are.
In the gym?
Yeah, it's gonna be in the gym. And I'd say about half of them are gonna be student booths, maybe a little less than half. But, so our task now is just to make sure that people know they need to come. So the concession stand will be open, they will have pizza and snacks and goodies. Their culinary arts is gonna have some good desserts and things. So we'll just see how it goes. You know, it's the first time we've done this, but, I think it'll be a nice time to showcase some of our student work, especially.
Quick question, culinary arts, is it all 9th through 12th grade, or is it just 11th, 12th grade? Can it?
11th and 12th really are the ones that have time for it. You know, it counts as a fourth math, yeah.
Math, okay.
Yeah, so,
Just sounds-
yeah, the freshmen, sophomores don't quite have time in their schedule
Okay.
with the year-long classes, so. Let's see, we have, for next year, we've hired a history teacher for high school and an EC teacher. either go, or we're gonna go next Wednesday to the ECU Education Career Fair. So, we'll see what we get from that as well. I submitted to DPI after many months of, well, not many months, several months of going through it, an alternative evaluation instrument. Right now, teachers in the state get evaluated with this educator effectiveness system, which is fine, but evaluation-wise for our guides with Montessori curriculum and just sort of what some of our expectations are, it's better for us to have a different evaluation tool. And so I did a crosswalk, which takes the state standards and connected them with what our standards are. And it has finally been approved. So, anyway, that was,
Can you use
Is that
that this
better
year?
work?
That's a long
Can you
way.
start using it this year, or do you have to wait till the?
yeah, I could. It's really more towards, I mean, are we getting teachers? I'm still using the state standards because it's just a very basic, it's just easier to do it that way.
Mhm.
But as far as evaluating like the beginning teacher mentors, because we've got 4 of those, and just our guides in general.
That's cool.
Yeah. With our marketing, I don't know if anybody has seen our ad from WITN. I've had several people say they saw it on their streaming channel or
Yeah.
whatever, however they're getting their, television.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so that's good, and we've been doing some more social media, marketing. I wrote social meeting, social media.
I see
Yeah.
on my Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, they're
yeah, all the
good.
social
So we're
media.
highlighting the seniors too, and highlighting athletics, and so hopefully that'll just be some, good, I don't wanna say publicity, but for lack of a better word, that's it, yeah. Part of our charter renewal, self-study that we did included us coming up with a portrait of a graduate for 6th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade. And we have completed that. It's not, I still wanna do a little bit of tweaking on the verbiage. Some of the things that we have are kinda long, but we've got a list of about 15 sort of attributes that we want our students to have, and what that looks like for a 6th grader, what it looks like for an 8th grader, and what it looks like for a 12th grader. And then we're gonna work on we've worked on a graphic a little bit that we will put somewhere cool, and it really will fit in with our 25th year. So. Our summer service learning group, we're planning on going through with that for this summer. So far, there are about 15 kids who have said they're interested. So that'll probably be sort of our minimum, so we're gonna have to budget computers for that, which we already talked about. And one thing that we have done is we have met with a company that will do an online application system for us, because right now we are still doing paper. People say, we want to apply, and we say, all right, we'll send you a PDF, and they have to print it. If they can figure out how to type in it, good for them. Or they have to print it and fill it out and then send it in. So we're gonna have an online system now, and that will automatically put people in the lottery. And then this system will actually do the lottery for us.
Yeah, we're fishbowl. That's good.
I was telling one of my
I
counterparts in
appreciate
Baltimore,
that, because
and
that's
she
part of
died
me is
when I
like,
said we just pull names from a fishbowl, but, so that's kind of the new
We
way.
still print it off.
We could just keep the fishbowl for display.
Well, the person in the demo, so you can still have your board meeting and you can display it
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
screen
yeah,
and you
yeah.
hit, and then it just like this countdown, and it's, so,
It's not like a lottery thing.
I don't know.
We can make that.
Yeah, we need like a man on white up there like talking.
Yeah.
Big.
Y'all know, figure it out.
Just go to wheelofnames.com and just put everybody in and press a button.
That's true.
Well, this
The
is
sad
like,
part is
this
what-
is a legal
Yeah.
system. They do 50 schools in the state, and, they're out of Florida, I think, but, anyway.
So you get to the fun screen, you still got 7 families left and one name to call. Everybody's celebrating while 6 people are crying.
But it'll also send out their acceptance letters automatically. I mean, that's extremely time consuming, for.
It'll save Carol a lot of time.
Yeah.
So it's very efficient from that standpoint.
awesome.
Everything is, it's not just pulling the names out of the, all the follow-up that Carol has to do.
Yeah.
Phone calls that come in, and this will mitigate well over 90% of that easily. Yeah.
So I think that's all I have, unless y'all have questions. I don't know, what we are gonna have all of our half days and the teacher workday that's in April. No,
March.
teacher workday is in
28th.
March,
Next
next week. We're gonna have to be here because of the snow, making up the snow days. It will not be snowing next week, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, Rick, budget and finance?
Okay, so looking at the finance report year-to-date, you just look at the year-to-date column through February. Basically, we've brought in a little over 3.3 million on the funding side, and that compares with, on the second page, aggregate numbers, just a little bit over 3.4 million on the expense side. Like I said, this is the budget picture, which is kind of different from the cash flow, but just to show you the relationship of year-to-date actual funding, actual expenses, and then looking at year-end total, I'm projecting with remaining funds, basically the net funding for the whole year will be about $5 million. Expense side will kind of match up with that. We're a little bit hot on the expense side on two things. I talked about legal last month, but we've made some. If you kind of look at, we're a little bit high there, and that's due to the fact we made the shift. We finished our contract with Washington Daily News at the end of February, and so we've put a little bit more money in play there to make this shift. Where we had the two advertising components with WITN, and then with the social media group that Austin talked about in marketing. So we're kind of shifting, if you think about the social media marketing group, which is basically a monthly rate, but we don't have to do like a whole year, so we're kind of selecting the months at which we really want intensive, servicing and over the course of the year. So that marketing expense line will be, high only because we had Washington Daily News through the end of February, and I could tell you, like in January and February on those invoices, a component of each of those outside of the digital marketing was like a little over $2,000. And for the January, it was for our Christmas, what they put in advertising in what I call hardcover, and then the February had our Washington magazine. So I've asked Jennifer to actually follow up with them because I want to make sure that, we pay that, we're not going to pay that invoice until, I don't want to pay that invoice and then that covers our advertising in Washington magazine for the rest of this year. We wanted to end it. So, but just to give you an example of a couple of times a year, 3 or 4 times a year, we'll get that high 2,000. That's like in a regular. That's like $8,000. So we did put a little bit more money this year to make that shift, and then a little bit more on the technology side. That goes back to the investment we made this year on updating that network update, that refresh we did. So, looking at kind of the total expense projection on $5 million, kind of matching up with funding, some of the things were intentional, kind of making these shifts here. Going to the next page, a quick snapshot with before and after school and day school, essentially year to date. Like you've seen, this is the relationship relative to fees we received this year and expenses year to date. So, on paper through February, they're both net positive, a little bit over $13,000. The cash report on the next page, I did want to talk through really the money market and the CD. So we moved that $250,000 out of the day school into the money market, and so the first month where we got basically full interest on that, that was just a little bit under $1,000. So if you kind of think, it was about $984. So if you think about, the return on the money market, and so, I kind of look at the money market as, okay, if it's about $900, $1,000 a month, then, that's something we don't touch, so that should increase by about $12,000 over the next year, 10 to 12,000. The CD is doing really well. The last 4 months, the earnings on it has been over $500, and I've gone back through that CD, and I'm going to talk probably as we get into the summer, Joseph, on the retreat, because we renew that CD every 6 months, so we'll renew it in August. But I really want to come back to the board, maybe during the retreat, just kind of say, hey, here's been the performance of it. There are a number of years where the CD, the return has been like $20, $30 a month. And we're just in this cycle, and I think it's a function of where bond markets are right now. So the last 4 months, we've had like $500 and some odd dollars a month. And I know that'll be a function of how things are conditionally in the bond market. But once that goes away, so I'll come back and be prepared to talk to you all in the summertime. And maybe if we want to make a shift with the CD, it would be in the October renewal, okay? Because like I said, if you look at our cash, those 3 accounts, roughly about $725,000, that's cash, that's not part of our operations. But in the coming months, I'll come back to you on, hey, this is how I think we can grow this, and really have a target for 5 to 10 years. Ideally, what we want $725,000 to grow into, whether it's dividend earnings or another component of investment or something like that. Okay. And then you've already seen the last one. So this cash flow, I'll update. Down the stretch, and I may keep it in next year in the report, just so you get the budget and basically our operating cash flow picture. And like I said, this is just Fund 1 and Fund 2 on purpose. So what you don't have in here is what we get in our pass-through grants from DPI, or what I call Fund 3, that's IDEA and Title I. I purposely did it with just our Fund 1 and Fund 2, because that comprises the bulk of our funding each school year. Any questions on the budget report? Real quick, I'll jump over just to let you know, according to DPI, initial state planning allotments, it was scheduled to post last Friday. They pushed it to this Friday, and that's fairly normal. So what they usually do is take our initial enrollment, the CDASM, which we submitted, I think, in January. So all that is the planning allotment. So we may see that tomorrow, or they may push it, I don't know. And like Austin said, we're working on creating a fundraising plan working with Doug. That'll be coming. Facilities, we had the main thing there is we had encroachment on the south side of building 1 again with the Sunday downburst. So, I'm going to get Tony back out here. It's closer, it's on one side, but it seems to be when we get these wind-driven, when we get these cold fronts that come through and we get the high winds and the rail head, and it's just angle-driven, And it really is trying to figure out where it is weeping into, and then it literally drops. And this time it was really in just the 2 classrooms, and it was a little bit like that in January as well. So it's been a little bit confounding, but we're gonna keep working on it. And then athletics real quick, soccer teams, spring soccer has started. They've, I think they've won 1 game, lost 1. And tied 1, yes. We decided this year to do 2 separate events for athletic recognition, one for middle school, one instead of all combined. I think those are scheduled for May. I'm about 40% through a sports policy for next year. Doing the kind of the yeoman's work on it, so that's basically the point there. And then we're beginning the hiring process, which will be part of that policy. But essentially what we're doing is, I did a standard job description for head coaches. It's kind of a universal description, and I'll be putting that out either tomorrow or Monday. And all coaches will have to apply. So I've kind of talked to a lot of existing coaches who come back and say, hey, you're gonna have to apply, so we'll bring them in, we'll interview them. And part of that, the interview, 2 threads there will be, they'll have to come in with their coaching plan and their conditioning plan. They'll have to come to the interview. We're gonna interview them each year going forward. And that's part of this policy that I'm working on.
Any traction on the Booster Club?
The Booster Club, no, we need a club. We need an athletic booster. We need parents involved. I mean, we really do. We just gotta figure out how to get it, not just started, but we've gotta get altitude on it. It goes back to when I was on the board. We could just never, when early start, we just never could get it off the ground. But it's important, we have to have a booster club when you look at the whole outlay with athletics. When you look at, if I do a straight line budget, which I'm tinkering with still for next year, you're talking about $40,000 a year in operational outlay. That's coaches, that's referees,
Yeah, that's
that's
not any
equipment.
improvements.
Huh?
So that's not any
No,
improvements.
that's like resurfacing the gym floor, working with the soccer field each year. I mean, referee fees are $7,500 to $8,000 a year when you go through all of the sports, volleyball, basketball, soccer. And so, we've been talking about, concessions, and concessions is a big part of athletics. But the point is we have to get, as part of that fundraising plan, we have to get, a booster club. And we have to get parental involvement. And it's not something you can simply kind of say, well, like WMPTO is really going good hypothetically, can we, no, because that's not the way to go, that's not the way to go long term, but.
So we had a discussion about this a few months back, and it was stated there's a lack of interest on behalf of the parents. But I also wonder, I understand that when those sessions were to try and generate that interest, that maybe they were inopportune times. I wonder if there's been any further discussion about how to get more interest to really expand those opportunities for people to learn more about
Right.
what it is that the school would like to see.
So,
No, we haven't discussed that in depth.
Mhm.
We need to, I know.
Whether that would be prior to or post a specific event where they're invited in, I don't know, maybe cookies and whatever following the game.
And we did that last year, we had an interest meeting, and we had some interest, and then people had some good ideas, and they said, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and then nothing happened with it. So.
It just needs to have someone to kind of coordinate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not unlike the MBTO.
In a lot of ways it isn't, it's just specific to athletics, yeah.
Have we explored, or is there an opportunity? I know, we've got a lot of student businesses, that helps them for their trips, but, from the athletes, if they've soccer scoreboard.
Yeah.
You set that goal, and then, maybe something a little bit more generic that gets all the sports engaged, and then, have them drive it.
Yeah, and we talked about that too, about having like a specific soccer team fundraiser. I mean, that's standard in schools, I feel like.
To me, that's something that's in our control. I'll be honest with you, we're going that direction, and, I talked to the coaches more than once. Athletic director talked to them, and it just didn't materialize. So part of the process for each year for, let's just say, hiring our coaches in the interview would be the clear expectation that.
How are you gonna drum up?
And it's in, well, what I did, Joe, so I found it basically a generic head coach job description in North Carolina. And activities linked to development is in there. And so it's in that announcement. So that'll just be part of the, because we pay coaches pretty well. And so part of the work there and the expectation will be is that, a person comes on as the head coach, that's part of that what we pay them.
But they're the most
and then we give them,
positioned to do it. I said they're the most positioned to do it because,
Yeah.
Whoever's going to lead the booster club is going to be a parent of a student athlete.
Right. Yeah.
No one has more engagement with student athlete parents than coaches.
Yeah. So, but, and that one would probably be like, I'll talk out of turn with us interview, just to try to get that push a little bit more in my lane next year, because it's just something that, we gotta find a path and a way to, we do.
I did have a question on facilities. Is there a plan or on your radar? I was noticing the gym, on the outside of the gym, how rough it's looking to.
Yeah,
clean that
so,
up for
yeah,
the next
that's,
6 months
I'm
or
gonna
so?
have somebody come over and work on that, and, it's really a function of that, it's that, kind of like that stucco exterior, so that all that you see down there is literally from water, rain, when it rains, and it just runs down and kind of collects the dirt and over year after
Yeah.
year, so, yeah, that's on the list for this summer.
So just power washing it and applying some sort of
Well,
anti.
yeah, I've had, it's applying something because that exterior, that surface is, I've been told it can be pressure washed, but if you won't damage it, so that's kind of the approach I'm taking to get the side of the gymnasium section.
Well, that'd be done this summer.
That's on my list for this summer, yeah.
Well, would that be hiring someone, or would
Yeah.
that be a beautification project involving like a school, whole school grounds?
No, this would be hiring somebody, yeah.
It's pretty tall.
It's pretty, yeah, you get it,
It's
you
small,
gotta,
you have to have a
specialize
powerful
equipment.
power wash.
well, no, you gotta have the right equipment to do it, yeah, obviously the scaffolding to get up there, yeah, this will be a contract, yeah. And it's, I think if we do it, then maybe once every 5 years or something like that, probably my sense.
Well, I'm assuming it's never been, how long have we had it?
11 years.
But it just showed up. Like,
Yeah,
it seems like
I've never noticed it until
So-
tonight, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
it's looking a little rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I noticed it when I first came back in September of 2020, when I walked around the campus, and it was like, so I noticed it then. And so, yeah, the building's literally 11 years old, so I think if we get it, get it clean, I think it's like, every 4 to 5 years, and then it takes less of effort to do it. Yeah.
All right, employee leave policy changes.
New business, okay. New business.
Yeah, we just.
That's me, oh, this. Hey, see, the new business, are we on there?
Yes.
Okay, good, sorry. Wanted to kind of discuss, I touched on it real briefly, can't remember if it was last meeting in January. Was it last meeting? Okay. Yeah, so looking at, the last 2 years, we've had 10 days of personal time off in policy for quite some time. Looking at that, and then the past 2 years, I can look, and we're at it again. I can tell you we've got 7 employees right now who are out of time. A lot of it is due to sickness, whether it's the staff member, him or herself, or children. And so, I kind of saw this last year and seeing it again this year, and really, I think moving forward, because everybody's essentially 10 months, but we really do need to have, in addition to what I call the personal days, which we really need to have an equal amount of sick days. 8 hours a month, 10 months school year, 80 hours. And really from the cost standpoint, it's really not that much of an additive cost, because I budget like $30-some-odd thousand a year for substitutes, right? But I really think that it creates, from a workforce balance kind of a thing. It's really hard when, and like I'd say 3 of those staff members that basically are over, they were out of leave, and it was all health related by the end of October. That's a long way to June, and so what I'd like to do is when we get out to, because I've kind of inlaid it into personnel handbook, this section, how it would all work. So I can kind of bring it back to you all, I think around the May board meeting, unless you want me to carry it.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know where it's board again is, but I know we normally approve.
You want to do it, I can carry it to the summer.
Yeah, my thought was we would discuss it at the retreat, and then
Okay,
we would
that's
make
fine.
any changes.
Yeah, so I'll get it all basically, to paper. And essentially how it would work is like right now, our paid time off, we accrue that, and you can carry balances if you don't use them.
Is there a cap on that?
Huh?
Is there a cap on the carry?
Yeah, so the cap right now is like 240 days, which is 6 weeks. So I'll probably come down to like a month at 160 hours. And all that means is that if one hits the cap, any time over that, you pay them back down to the cap. You know what I'm saying? But it's because of what I'm talking about in relation to how time gets used. There's only like a handful of folks on the staff that have those kind of numbers out there that have been here a long time. People that have been here anywhere from a year to, I'll say, 10 years on the personal time will more than likely not get up to that carryover cap. The way the sick time would work is that if somebody doesn't use all their sick time, that can carry over without restriction. It's just that if the employee leaves here, they don't get paid out for it, it just goes away. Yeah.
Do we retain that at all?
Say what?
Do we retain it for a period of time before it goes away?
No, usually it goes away, just like,
I know like when I worked for the county, they would pay you out your
your personal
vacation,
time.
but your sick time would stay on the books for 5 years in case you ever come back.
Yeah, so,
With the
yeah, okay.
state, it stays on, because I retired a year early because I had so much sick.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make that point in there, just to put that in there so we can talk. My thought was just if an employee leaves, it goes away because.
Which I don't know,
Because we're-
historically, how many times we have employees that come back.
Yeah. Well, and we're not part of state employment, like I had the same thing when I left, East Carolina.
Mhm.
I had 8 months of additional service credit because I had 8 months of sick time.
Well, I'm just thinking, if you have, somebody works here for 8 years, they leave on good terms.
Yeah.
Grass isn't greener, they come back a year later.
Okay, yeah.
Don't want to lose
Yeah,
all that.
I'll put us like a point in there when we talk about it, but that's basically, when it's kind of time that, that I think it's really, it's needed as a benefit. And this is totally different from when we signed up like for the parental leave, for maternity leave, in accordance with that state requirement. That's different. In other words, we signed on to that, so if somebody goes out on maternity leave, you know, they get additional leave that's not part of personal, and it's not part of sick. You know, and so, this would be just basically, you know, a school year, you know, because a lot of our staff have kids in school, kids get sick, or they got doctor's appointments, or they get sick with themselves and they're out for like 2 weeks. And we've had that happen the last 2 years, and it's happened like early in the year, and it makes it really, really difficult. And we don't have quite the dynamics to go to put a call out for shared, because we don't have, you know, we can do that, but it's not an effective way to cover those shortfalls.
So at the end of one's career, there is no compensation for that excess time that has accumulated?
Well, the only thing I can do now is like, I have to meet with 7 folks, you know, next week and kind of go through a repayment. You know,
But there's
plan.
not anything in,
Yeah, I mean,
that
that's,
if they gain, if they get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. And so, yeah, anybody that's over has to basically pay it back. And so that's difficult, because then, so I'll meet with those folks, because I've got basically, you know, options for them, but still, that's, you know, year to year, that's kind of painful.
Do you still have people donate money?
Well, we do, but like I'm saying, we don't
Not
have.
money, but donate.
If I look at the whole workforce, we don't have a lot of staff that have,
A bank
you know,
to donate.
hours to kind of donate, you know. When I was at the university, the call goes out to the entire university. It's different, right? We just don't, and we don't have those kind of numbers. And
No
s-
deep pockets with them?
Yeah, no deep pockets with the carryover.
You be eyeballing some people, like, you've
Yeah.
been here a while, what you got?
Yeah.
What you carrying around?
I did
We'll
that
make a deal on,
favor.
we'll make a deal on the playground.
Yeah.
But no, but seriously, you get the point, and even to the donate, we just.
I definitely think it sounds like the change is being made, I think it's a matter of what the change
What it
is
is.
and how.
Yeah.
how we do it.
And for next year.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I talked through the initial pro-forma budget, so I'm gonna kind of cycle back through that. The only thing to say is go ahead and review it, because next month I'll put it up on Joseph as an action item. And this would just be the initial, just the approval of the pro-forma budget for next year, like we did, I think, last April. One thing I did on the expense side, I did plug in at this point a 2% COLA. You'll see that in there. And I really wanted to see how well that would work on the expense side, which it did, and also putting in the new long-term debt. So just go ahead and read through this. I'll brief it as an action item in April.
Only question I had was getting a little bit in the weeds, I'm sure you thought through it, but on the supplies lines, I noticed now we're projecting 95 on the year, we're at 83, and you've got 80.
Yeah, on the supply, thank you. So that was the other line going into my financial book. So we stretched a little bit there. And for things like this, the classroom chairs in Upper Elm, which are a very sturdy design, those things are 15, 18. They last a long time. So, and so we basically bought the same kind of chair. It was like $6 grand. So I purposely said, okay, let's inside the framework of our overall funding this year. So, you know, because I know that's good. Those chairs are going to last a long time. We did start to work on the high school replacing these chairs. These are 11 years old. And then the other part that's really been interesting on the supply side is, I'll be honest with you, it's basically paper towels, toilet paper, has really, and copy paper. So in that 95, Joseph, I got two
Well,
things.
my point, where I was going in my head is, as you look at this, you know, it's my opinion, that's not an area where I think we should cut corners.
Yeah.
You know, I see it all the time, I don't know how bad it is here, you know, teachers having to ask for supplies.
Oh,
or
yeah,
donations and stuff
yeah.
like. So if there are needs that need to be met, then, you know, I would be more interested in increasing that, you know, even
That's
past
fine.
the 95 if we need to.
Okay.
and can sustain it,
Yeah.
you know, to fulfill those needs, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. And, because I'm with that, that's exactly what we did this year and last year, so.
Because I just don't want us to be in a position, I know we're about to, you know, we just talked about we're entering into a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
payments, but, you know, if we do have carryover funds, I don't want it to be, you know, broken chairs, wobbly tables, you know, little things that we can
Yeah.
take care of.
They're coming back on your pencil sharpener. Or the bank, my pencil sharpener.
Hey. But, yeah, that is, but no, see, yes, yeah, I can do that on that as well, but, yeah, because, yeah, we don't want to do that, and actually.
And I don't want staff to feel burdened, you know, you're paying it out of pocket either. I mean,
Yeah,
we can't
and
have
so-
everything, and it's
So
not a
just along that line,
Christmas, but.
so what I should have for the April meeting, well, probably, I'll do that, but by the time we get to May, because one thing I'll do is, and I've talked to the leadership team, the heads of levels, so, either next week or the week after, I'm gonna kick them out a budget sheet. And at level, they'll work through their supply component, and the direction is to come back to me in about 3 weeks with a budget request. So that's another step
Correct.
in the process, okay? But I'll put that number in the budget, and then, but that will be coming back to me, you know, by the end of April, early May. So, and I talked to Ms. Miller, L'Oreal, and a couple of others at L'Oreal, because I know their Montessori materials are at the point where we probably need to replace, we've got missing pieces and.
Tell Children's House, I don't get to fill out one.
Hmm?
Children's House doesn't get to fill out one, they're getting a new building, so.
Yeah, right, okay.
You tell Miss Jody then.
Yeah. Your paper said new building.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, I will entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess, and we will reconvene in closed session at 8:20. Robin and Sarah, any opposed? All right, thank you everybody for coming. Adrian, I'll call you back in a second.
All right, thanks.
Have a good night.
But I was like, what?
Maybe it
I
could
was
be.
like, what?
I don't know, is this my
Thank you,
You're
Jamie.
really good.
Almost
So
the
you're
door
just
hits
gonna
you.
sit here and be like,
Right.
I see the accidentally printed a folder for you. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I got a plan.
Oh,
Christy and I got-
I remember Christy did a
I
plan,
got-
yeah.
Her and I got the
Well,
same
this
plan,
isn't
but,
anything.
you know, I had that
You had to go through a whole lot.
You know, I had that thing.
Very, very
It's
small.
survived for like 2 years. In my office at ECU.
That's
Really did,
cool.
yeah.
You should have been able to bring it back here.
Well,
I mean, now that you
well,
do.
eventually it finally passed on because it was in there during.
That's why it came back, because it's plant.
Oh, it's another
It was
plant.
no plant. That's the only reason it's here.
Sorry.
In about 16 more years, we can get you one.